Hello and welcome to Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. Unleashed is produced by Umbrex, which connects you with the world's top independent management consultants. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm excited to be here today with Jamie Head, who is the Chief Digital and Technology Officer at Ocean Spray Cranberries. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Will. Pleasure to be here.
So I have so many questions for you, Jamie. First, could you just tell us what Ocean Spray is? I think it kind of has, I believe, a kind of an interesting structure. A lot of people might not be familiar with.
Yeah, sure. So we're Ocean Spray, so we're in the business of cranberries. We're a cooperative made up of just over 700 farmers, mainly in the U.S., Canada, and Chile is where our production is made. And we own about 65-70% of the world's cranberry supply. So we know all things cranberry and produce a various amount of drinks and food for our consumers. And the great thing about the co-op now is that we're investing more into be a health and wellness company beyond just the cranberry. But it's a fantastic place to work and be.
So that's very interesting. So tell me, what does it mean to be a cooperative of farmers as opposed to some other brands that might be, just sort of buying and sourcing the raw material from farmers? What does even that mean to be a cooperative farmers? How does that work?
Yeah, I think there's many different dimensions to co-op models. We're pretty much a marketing cooperative, and we where we are is we're pretty much vertically integrated. So all of our supply pretty much comes from the farms. So uh, it's uh, it's a great story to be in a company where you can see all the way down to the vines in the ground where your product comes from. So in a world where consumers thrive on transparency and understanding where their product is made, we have a fantastic heritage and story to tell there. Being a cooperative. Now, the other side of it is obviously the capital side. So our earnings go directly back to our farmers, which is a really important thing to do. Certainly, if you look at the macro level at our farming economy across certainly the US, they'll see farmers are struggling as well. So has a really good purpose to it that we have a collection of farmers out there, and what we do every day is for them and their families.
All right, very interesting. Um, we, I suppose I could have looked this up, but I'm just curious. Um, I imagine that most cranberries kind of come ripe and get harvested about the same time of the year. So does that mean that Ocean Spray has some sort of massive warehouses somewhere? Like, how do you store all those cranberries for people? I mean, I guess a big part of the season would be around Thanksgiving, but what do you
Mm.
do with all the cranberries for cranberry juice and so forth that, you don't, do you have like massive warehouses to store them?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it is very much in the same time of year, except for the likes of Chile, where it's on a different summer schedule. But um, we harvest throughout the fall. Sort of October time is the peak season. Usually on a farm, it's between 2 to 4 weeks when they're harvesting the crop. Um, and most of it goes to receiving stations. So we have dotted around the US receiving stations to receive that crop. And when we look at the yields change every year, but most of the yield is used within we call it a pool year. If not, then it will go into sort of freezer and storage as well for subsequent years.
Okay. Um, and in terms of it being a co-op, does that mean that the company is owned by the farmers? And how does the kind of corporate governance work? Did the farmers have is there like a board of directors that the farmers elect, or just tell me a
Mm.
little bit about how that's structured? It's a little bit unusual.
Yeah, sure. Actually, it's not as unusual as you think. We're a Delaware registered company, and we have a board very much like other private companies out there. It's a board that's elected by the farming community, and all of the owners in the co-op, sorry, all of the members of the co-op are owners of the business, but they elect their board member, and you have representation across the different growing regions. So every region has representation at the board, and the board essentially are fully empowered to make the decisions with the management team on our strategies and directions. So it's not actually dissimilar to other sort of boards and corporations I've been part of. And again, our co-op model is different to other co-op models. So other co-ops have a different structure, but we're pretty good in that respect in terms of decision making.
Okay. You mentioned that the company is working to transition to be more of a health and wellness company, broader than cranberries. Could you talk about some of those initiatives that, the things that are publicly announced?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're on a really exciting journey here. We're 90 years young, and we have so much potential and upside ahead of us. It's a great place to be at Ocean Spray, and our purpose and sort of vision is around connecting our farms to family for a better life, and we are moving away. Well, not away. We're going to keep to our core business of beverage, but we need to innovate rapidly around the edges. And we have another sort of strategy of twice the innovation in half the time. And we're doing things in areas which are not necessarily cranberry focused. So some I can't talk about here, but we just launched one, a Toka Wellness, which is online now. It's actually our first D2C play as well. But on that product offering, you can see a definite shift between how do we get into the consumer's mindset and needs of wanting different health beverages throughout the day for different needs, and there's a variety of offerings that we're going to be coming out with along that space. And then certainly in the snacking aisle or even space, people are eating differently throughout the day. Before COVID, it wasn't necessarily a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. People snack throughout the day, as you know, and demanding different ways to consume their calories in a healthy way. So, looking at the portfolio from that lens has been really interesting, and we're about to launch one product. I cannot recall timings if I can say it or not just yet, but in more of the convenience area where you can pick up a snack and eat it on the go or at your desk or at home. So various areas, kids, functional flavors, snacking, smoothies, health, and potentially other spaces. So we have to be deliberate and focus in some areas, but in another way, our innovation team, led by a great leader under Rizal, is saying, well, we're going to test more often and in smaller markets to see what will stick, and then scale it from there. So a lot of innovation to come through the pipeline in a short space of time.
Fantastic. You mentioned the COVID-19. Could you talk about what Ocean Spray has been doing to protect both your farmers as well as your customers and the rest of your supply chain during the pandemic?
Yeah, no, our thoughts are out there to everybody in the world who are dealing with this. It's certainly a very challenging time, and we are fortunate to be in a category that is in demand from our consumers. They are wanting our product to be in their refrigerator at home and consuming it. So in that respect, we're blessed that we can put the food and beverage on the shelf of consumers at home. And we always are people first, and protecting our employees is key. We have sort of very strict rules at our manufacturing plants, certainly around social distancing, etc. We've also increased pay for our manufacturing plants as part of our response in this time. And as most organizations, the corporate staff are working from home around the world and will remain so for a conservative future. So that's we're protecting our employees, keeping manufacturing open and going, and touch wood, we're in a relatively healthy space, and I hope that remains so. And for our customers, the customers being the Walmarts, etc., the retailer world, we continue to operate within their guidelines as well. Our sales team, our field sales team, adopting more working remotely as well with our key account managers on the other side. So we're all as an industry in CPG mucking in together and pretty much doing the same sort of things in the same categories, which is good to see.
Yeah. Has that required any different or innovative processes the on the sales side? I've spoken with a manufacturing firm that always used to have their customers come in person to validate and do the acceptance testing. Um,
Mm.
and spoke with Marvin Riley at Inpro Industries, who talked about how their go-to-market has really changed in terms of, instead of sending a sales rep out by alone on a flight, they're now having, it's doing video conferences, but because of that, they're able to get a much broader set of team members involved: the manufacturing engineer, the production engineer, and the designer. So they get like the full team involved on the sales calls. It's actually been more effective, and they plan to keep doing that. Do you see any kind of changes like that happening that have almost been forced on the company because of the coronavirus?
Yeah, it's a fantastic example, and we are seeing, things going differently, and sometimes for the better. And post COVID, it is going to be interesting to see how we uh, adopt some of these changes going forward. But I think similar to that example, look, we're doing a significant amount of innovation, which requires a lot of collaboration with retailers to accept the product. And like you see in our consumer world of unboxing and unveiling on YouTube, we're doing that same thing in real time, and shipping care packages to the buyers, and doing virtual openings of the boxes, and making it more of an experience virtually than we would have done. And yes, to your point, we can then include more people around the innovation team and R&D and supply to talk about the products. So um, that's resonating and going well. Um, and then obviously our key account teams maintain the relationships mainly by video conferencing at the moment.
Could you say a little bit more about that? About how innovation, how you have to work with the retailers. That's not maybe something that I would have been so aware of. I mean, it makes sense. So for a packaged goods company, food and beverage, that's making a new product, how do you work with a retailer along the way? So it sounds like you don't just sort of wait till the end when you have it ready to ship and say, "Hey, do you want a pallet of this?" So how do you involve major retailers in that whole innovation process?
Yeah, I think this is where the top to tops and strategic account management really comes into play. We sort of industry captains in our single um, in our shelf stable juice aisle. So we have good working relationships with our customers, and I think when you go to the table, say, listen, what challenges do you see? What challenges do your consumers have when they shop your store? And how can we partner up together to understand and fill that gap, and supply it faster than somebody else, for example. So having top to tops and those conversations with other members of our C-suite, with key partners, is a really important play. They, the customers are also demanding, say, look, we don't just want another product extension line. We've seen that for many, many years. What else is different? And that's where we're grabbing their attention, say, wow, you've got a toka, you've got these other things coming down the pipe. That's really interesting, Ocean Spray. Let's talk about it. And by the way, we see this gap from our insights, and could you partner up and take part of it? So it starts with a really healthy conversation and a good top to top to really understand and break down where the opportunities lie for both customer and manufacturer. But once you've got that down pat, it's all about execution and can you actually deliver what you said you can do, and getting it out the door in a fast way, which we hopefully can and will do.
Great. Let's talk about your role a little bit. So, Chief Digital and Technology Officer. Uh, Maybe we could start. How is that different from a Chief Information Officer?
Yeah, great question, and it's always interesting. I try and stay away from using the word digital, so it's ironic that it's in the title. But um, the the original mandate when I arrived here was to modernize the core infrastructure and landscape of IT, or the tech team as we call it here, and it became very apparent as we started that journey. But yes, we can modernize our business and digitize some of the functions to get benefit of modern technology and processes, which we are doing, and shifting more of our work to the cloud, building integration across our various investments, etc., and developing a really good data and architecture layer behind it. But the shift then came to say, well, what else is there out there? And we had a very, I wouldn't say, well, traditional marketing model in that it was agency led and agency heavy. But um, we then said, okay, if marketing technology is really driving this consumer two-way relationship, and we must be obsessed with the consumer more than we have been, how do you put technology within marketing and build up that capability in-house versus agency? So we did that, and we formed our digital hub, which is our sort of COE for digital marketing, and driving I would say, tech-led, process-led capability building in-house across media buying, optimization, content, and commerce, with a small but mighty all-star team that will help really drive transparency with agencies, and also become quicker with consumers online in our social world. So we have hands-on keyboards capability, we now have analytics capability, etc. So that's part of that digital role. And then when we come out of our 2-year modernization of the co-op, how do we then get into actual digital business models and innovate around the edges there? So that's to come. We'll get the base done first, and then get into that other game very soon. So that's how the world has been defined so far for the world here.
Could you go into a little bit more detail on the Center of Excellence for Digital Marketing? Maybe take each one of those areas and just give me a couple examples of what it means. So you talked about content, you talked about commerce, you talked about ad buying,
Mm-hmm.
and what does that take to bring that in house? And just explain to me a little bit what that means in practice.
Yeah, sure. So there's a few components to it, but first of all, if you break down an organization internally, you have quite a few internal customers. You have marketing, you have corporate affairs, e-commerce, shopper marketing. You even have your own sort of web presence, etc., online, like oceanspray.com and other sites. So with that, you have common requests and capabilities across. I need content created for this channel, this time, etc. So there's that piece around how do you build and maintain content at your digital shelf level within commerce, but also across your other owned channels that you need to operate. And before, that was relatively fragmented. Now we can reuse assets, make sure the legal language is correct, and monitored and maintained, and be more efficient with content there. So that's important to do. Now with a tech lens, we were talking about dams and PIMs and things like that. But from a business end, it was around centralizing that content creation work. The other side of it is the social part, and how do we become a lot quicker on the social world, and rather than push messages out, build a two-way relationship with our consumers, and take advantage of things like Thanksgiving, where we want to own Thanksgiving being a cranberry business. So having the capability to not only slice and dice content on the fly, but also have the right brand voice with the right person to talk to our consumers was important for us to do internally versus always using third parties. And then on the media side, it's a few things there. It's, well, yes, how do you get the right media plan? How do you innovate across your channels with the agency? And how do you really get more working media dollars for your account? And with that, sometimes you need we have hired sort of 2 ex-agency people onto our team, which certainly helps with understanding the minutiae of how accounts work. But bringing in sort of DSPs in-house, owning the contract in-house versus agency-led, opens up the area of data transparency and understanding how exactly your dollars are being allocated to campaigns, and getting the data back directly. That's really key to help unlock value. And then sort of the fifth role to that is, okay, you've got all the data, but so what? Having marketing analytics as a capability is something we're building to ensure we can measure our KPIs and build up the business that way. Hopefully that explains it in a nutshell, between the roles in the hub.
Yeah, that's great. With the social part, how does that work? Is there sort of someone sitting at Ocean Spray who's writing the tweets or writing the Instagram posts, and like how do those get approved? How when people comment on it on Twitter, do you just how does that whole process work of having a consistent brand voice, but that's also responsive and getting replies and retweets and engaging with people?
Yeah, and it's a great question. We do use a third party to aggregate the social content, and by and large they take care of the majority of responses, but any reply back to consumers usually gets vetted by the digital hub team, to make sure it's consistent with our brand voice. Training and education to the third party team is also useful for our consumer help desk, etc. So that's always a continuous activity. But you have to make your little bets of, okay, where are the signals arriving to say, look, we've got a lot of noise generating on this campaign, or something popped in the influencer world which is suddenly of interest, or even look, this other brand is doing something fun, and they want other brands to participate in, and can we be part of that conversation? And it's for those events that you see the signals for, when the digital hub then go proactive and get into the mix, and then starting editing and directing the content ourselves. So you have to be choiceful, and that's where analytics comes in. But you can't be everywhere, but where you can, you've got to maximize it to what's going to have most impact.
And how do you it sounds like there's so many different areas of where technology is meeting marketing. How do you stay up to speed on just all of that range? Do you kind of talk to other people in similar roles or conferences, or is it you're talking to advisors, or how do you just sort of stay current?
Yeah, great question. And I probably can't, to be honest with you. Well, it's an ever-evolving space. I think somebody coined it, it's a Disneyland of tech out there. And certainly there's some people at HubSpot as well who can tell you a few stories about the marketing tech stacks out there. But how do I do it? Well, I have a great team, so I'm blessed with that, and they keep me informed of the key trends and activities. So obviously hiring talent is vitally important there, and making sure they're exposed externally, so they can keep current. Also, we're partners with Salsify here in Boston. They run a great forum around the digital shelf across other CPGs and other players. And certainly during this COVID time, Molly Chantal, a VP over there, has created a fantastic group of people in the CPG world to connect every other month to talk about how they're responding to COVID, for example, and what are they doing. So that's a really useful partnership, and we're developing others. And I think that's where you get the main signals around what's happening is, well, what are the technology providers or solution providers doing? How do they advise you on what other consumer customers are doing, etc.? They're really useful to connect you up and build a network. And then obviously our agencies, Agency of Record or our digital agency in New York, they're super plugged into it. So having your regular calls with them helps keep you on point and on your toes.
So, despite bringing some of these pieces in-house, you continue to work with external agencies.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Jamie, this has been really interesting to hear about some of what's going on inside Ocean Spray. Beyond pointing people to the Ocean Spray website, any other links or Twitter handles or anything else that you'd like for us to include in the show notes so people can follow up?
Well, I think when everybody's at home at the moment, it's a great time, as we've seen, for baking and home cooking. So please check out our recipes on oceanspray.com and Pinterest, Instagram, or whatever channel is your choice. But there's some great recipes out there for a very healthy fruit. So go at it and post some pictures. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. Jamie, thank you so much for joining.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.